We all know that President Obama escalated drone strikes abroad precipitously when he was in office and used them in warfare way more frequently than President Bush did. That's partly, to be fair, because the technology was still developing, sure, but the statistics are still pretty staggering. Obama embraced the U.S. drone program, overseeing more strikes in his first year than Bush carried out during his entire presidency. A total of 563 strikes, largely by drones, targeted Pakistan, Somalia, and Yemen during Obama's 2 terms, compared to 57 strikes under Bush. Between 384 and 807 civilians were killed in those countries, according to reports logged by the Bureau, this outlet. However, President Trump has been even more aggressive with his use of drone strikes, doubling the use of them in Yemen and Somalia in his first year, and rapidly increasing their use in Iraq and Syria as well, with more than 10,000 in his first year. According to statistics compiled by the Air Wars Watchdog Group, there were nearly 50% more coalition airstrikes in Iraq and Syria in 2017 compared with the previous year. Civilian deaths rose by 215%. The coalition, almost all U.S. planes, dropped 20,000 bombs on Raqqa. By the end of the 5-month campaign, 80% of the city was declared uninhabitable by the United Nations, and 1,800 civilians are thought to have been killed. Air Wars estimates 1,400 of those deaths were caused by coalition air and artillery bombardment. In those statistics, that's 2,878 Syrian civilians alone. By August, just months into his presidency, Trump had already killed more civilians than President Obama in Iraq and Syria when going after ISIS. But Trump is not done there, because it's not just wild bloodthirstiness that is motivating him, and especially the members of his swampy administration who are way more corporatist than him. He's just a loose cannon. It's the defense contractors. And in the past 2 days, the Trump administration has decided to help their buddies there out a lot in 2 different ways. The Trump administration rolled out a long-awaited overhaul of U.S. arms export policy on Thursday, aimed at expanding sales to allies, saying it will bolster the American defense industry and create jobs at home. The initiative, as first reported by Reuters, adds the full weight of government to Trump's direct personal role in pushing arms sales during interactions with foreign heads of state. Companies that stand to benefit from the new policy most include Boeing Company and the other top U.S. defense contractors, Lockheed Martin Corporation, Raytheon Company, General Dynamics Corporation, and Northrop Grumman Corporation. When is the last time sharing our military technology and increasing sales of weapons to foreign governments and current allies in volatile regions didn't work out for us? I can't remember. Maybe we should ask Ronald Reagan or Osama bin Laden. I don't know. We can, I guess. But as I mentioned in my video the other day, it's a reminder of how much these defense contractors spend on lobbying to get this exact result. Boeing and Lockheed Martin are in the top 20 organizations that have spent money on lobbying last year. I believe they're at 10 and 15. And then, what do you know? Many of the people in the Pentagon, the same people approving these deals, will get cushy jobs to pad their wallets with the same companies after their penance, service in the government is done, before they get that paycheck. But there's more news on the heels of this increase. A day after President Trump promised to slash the red tape involved in weapons sales, the administration announced on Thursday a new policy that could vastly expand sales of armed drones, a contentious emblem of the shift towards remotely controlled warfare. That change, in addition to a newly released update to the policy governing which nations are allowed to buy sophisticated American-made weapons, is intended to accelerate arms sales, a key priority of Mr. Trump. It would be, in some cases, years before orders would take place because of bureaucracy with Department of Defense, State Department, Mr. Trump said. We are short-circuiting that. It's now going to be a matter of days. If they're our allies, we are going to help them get this very important, great military equipment. I struggle to read that. He makes no sense, as usual. It's so funny. Whenever Republicans want to turn over our government services to their donors in the private sector, they make it about bureaucracy and making things easier. It was the same thing with our tax plan, the tax cuts for the rich. Now you can do your taxes on a Post-it. Does that actually matter to anyone? Does anyone actually care about that? The framing is just tired. Anyway, the New York Times continues. The biggest change announced on Thursday involves the sale of larger armed drones like the Predator and the Reaper, which have been the workhorses of the fights against insurgents in Afghanistan and the tribal regions of Pakistan. President Barack Obama embraced the weapons, but was also so troubled by such remote warfare tools that he placed unusual restrictions on their sale. Those restrictions have allowed drone makers in Israel, China, and Turkey to capture a large part of a market that American manufacturers had pioneered, something the Trump administration wants to reverse. Two of those countries are major allies of ours. One of them, China, is our economic competitor, but we're not in open war with them besides a trade war. And the two countries that are our allies are run by insane right-wingers, Erdogan and Netanyahu. We really want to adhere to their human rights standards? Of course we do. Of course Trump does. That's the new norm in America. Death of civilians abroad? No problem. As long as we're short-circuiting bureaucracy, whatever the hell that means, and we're enriching defense contractors, it is no problem. Human rights advocates denounced the changes as loosening rules they viewed as already too permissive. John Sifton, an advocacy director at Human Rights Watch, said that some of the changes were intended to make questionable arms sales easier to conduct. It's going to be easier to give licenses in cases like Saudi Arabia, which has a history of launching military strikes that harm huge numbers of civilians, Mr. Sifton said. Maybe part of the humanitarian answer is supplying less weapons to a war, Senator Rand Paul, Republican of Kentucky, said during the hearing. Indeed, Senator Paul, but somehow in this country, the conversation about helping our fellow human beings in other countries has become simultaneous with dropping bombs on those countries. It's Orwellian, and it's meant to conflate patriotism with empathy. No. Feeling good about your country's strength and power is not the same as actually caring for the people in those countries or actually trying to help them tangibly. If Trump and his minions actually wanted to help individuals, he wouldn't threaten to cut aid to the same countries that he's trying to bomb and bombing on a consistent basis. And he definitely wouldn't be blocking refugees from coming to the United States. The United States accepted only 11 Syrian refugees this year. Empathy, my ass. We see where your priorities lie, and it's not empathic.